Hello and welcome to Jerry's Live. I'm your host, Mott Tuman, and
I'm Emmy Klein. Welcome, welcome. And today, I'm very excited. So is Mott. We're gonna be talking about one of our favorite things in what the arsenal of art supplies that we get to use all of the time: ink. Not just ink, India ink. It's one of my favorites, and I believe yours. Yeah. So, if you guys are interested in any of the items that we are going to be using throughout the show today, make sure you go to the website, jerrysartorama.com, and type in today's class code, which is JL290. So, if you type that in the search bar, the teacher's cart should come up with everything that's kind of going to be displayed and used today for the show. So, I think we should jump into it, though. We got a lot of things to cover.
we got a lot of things to cover. So, we tonight are using the New York Central India ink, which is extremely black. I actually did this, drawing up here with it, which is a little skull. We're not sure what animal skull it is.
We were trying to figure out which kind. If anybody in the comments knows what that is, please let us know.
I think it might be an otter, not sure, but if you do, please let us know. Yeah. So you can see in the image, it's very black. There's a lot of different ways you can use inks.
And the background of that, you even watered it down quite a bit. We'll show you how dark this can really get.
Yeah. You guys can see some of the kind of bleeding that happened when it was mixed with water, and our background here created this cool effect.
But very, very cool. So the ink does come in 3 different sizes. We have a quart, which is 32 ounces. We have a pint, which is 16 ounces. And then we have this really awesome little guy, which is a single ounce. And I love this for like dip pens and stuff like that. So it's really convenient to have, just be able to have it like on your desk and kind of open the lid and dip pen kind of illustrate, which is what we're going to be doing today. So I'm going to move this out of the way.
We got a lot of different tools to do it with.
Yes. So today, though, we're mostly working, well, actually, I don't think we have any other varieties of paper that we decided to use. But we're going to be using the New York Central watercolor paper. It is 100% cotton. The reason why we're using this is just because it's a really, really absorbent paper. I really like it. You really like it.
And it works great with, I mean, you know, it's a watercolor paper, but inks are traditionally mixed a lot with water, which is what makes it great for inks too.
Yes. But the ink is really great for a variety of surfaces. I've also used it on Bristol before. I just really love this because it doesn't really like feather out as it, and once you put like a wet surface or wet inks and stuff like that, it doesn't have that weird feather effect. Where Bristol sometimes can do that. So, but we wanted to go over a variety of ways to use your India ink and kind of how to approach it as a media. So we have a lot of different things. Which one do you want to start with?
I think we should start with the dip pens.
All right. So like we said, the 1 ounce is really great for a dip pen use. I'm gonna actually get this out of the way so you guys can probably use it or see it here. And we have the 12 by 16 paper just because it's a big surface for you guys to see. But
actually, I'm going to put this over here where you guys can see it.
Here we go. We scooch that over just a little. There we go. Now we're on camera. All right, so this is the lid. I know it looks quite dark.
And this is our Golden Writ dip pen. So there's lots of different tools that you can use to work with ink, but dip pens are one of the best ways to get like really fine details if you want to dip it right in and feel like, you know, one of the old feather pens that was...
Yes, those are really fun. Now, you're holding the glass.
Yes.
Now, we also have other dip pens that come... We have a variety of different types out there. This is a holder that comes with a nib that comes with a variety of nibs, and you can change them out whether or not you want something really fine or really kind of almost calligraphy-like, because this is something that is a tool that a lot of calligraphers use as well. My handwriting is not great enough for that, but this is why we have Amanda. She writes all the things that makes it look pretty. So when it comes to dip pens, it's the answer's in the name. You just dip it into the ink and it's ready to go.
You could see these kind of glass dip pens, if you've never used it before, it's absolutely filled with ink right now and all those little rivets. Because of the surface tension of the ink, though, it's not going to like drip out or everything if I start moving this around, but it's going to flow out if I start doing a little bit of hatching on our paper here.
Yeah. And that's why the dip pens are really lovely because it holds so much ink within those grooves. The part that it's not quite lovely is that you are stuck with just that one single size of the nib. Whereas like this one, you can get the interchangeable nibs and you can change it up and have that variety that you're looking for. But it's, again, the same process of like you dip it into the ink. And then this one happens to have a little cutout here, which hopefully maybe you guys can see if I get a little closer here. It's got a little cutout right here, and then there's a split all the way to the end, and that's how it feeds the ink down through the nib. So this is the same way that you would use it for any other kinds of inks, but we're using the New York Central because it is waterproof. And I wanted to touch base on kind of what that means. Any ink can say that it's waterproof, water resistant. There's all kinds of different inks out there. The ones that we have, the New York Central, and I'm sorry, this is the one that we got a little messy because we've been using it. This is waterproof India ink. So that means that it will not reactivate once it's dry, once it's fully dry. You have to make sure that it is fully dry because the marks that Mott is making right now, I could activate them with water. You know, not a problem. And we can get a wash with them. Just like that. If you add water to it before it's dry. Now, if you let it fully dry, it will be completely permanent. And actually, I have a tester here of where I was just playing around with some washes that we made. Now, ignore the pink for right now. But if I take a brush fully saturated with water, I can get this as wet as I want to, and it's not going to move on me. It is completely waterproof. Now, when it comes to other inks that say that they're water resistant,
A little different.
yes, it is. That means that they will resist getting reactivated, but they are not 100% waterproof. There's still a possibility that they are going to reactivate. Now, I know when it came to illustrating when I first started out, I loved ink and gouache and watercolor, all of those types of things all mixed into my illustrations. And a lot of the times what I used, whatever kind of pen I had on my desk. This happened to be the pen I had on my desk in the office. So it's just a Sharpie, it's the S-Gel. I don't even think we sell these. It's just a normal pen, right? If I were to draw with it, I'm gonna let this dry for a minute, and then I'm going to come back in.
We do sell those.
We do? Oh, perfect. We do sell those. Sorry. I was like, I'm not entirely sure. I didn't check. Sharpie pen with an arrow. So I'm gonna let this dry, and then we'll go back through and reactivate it later on, which will be great. But when it comes to your nibs on any kind of dip pen, including the glass, when you are done using them, or if you notice that it's getting a little clogged up, the best way to handle that is to dip it into water, clean it off, and then you can continue to go back in and use it just like you would like a normal dip pen. The grooves on the glass, you do have to kind of twist it like Mott was just doing.
Yeah.
To really get it out of those grooves.
But really, just swishing it around in water, and I can show you guys real quick because it's a little bit off camera. I just swished this around in that water, and all that ink came on very quickly. And you can see how dark it got because just the slightest bit of this ink goes a really long way.
It does. It really does. And we'll show you that in just a minute when we start making washes, which I'm very excited. Although, really fun thing, the Creative Mark brush washing basin, the one that Mott just showed you, it has those 3 wells. Whenever I was doing illustrations, I would use stuff like that, and then my water that I would use to like rinse off my brushes would also become a wash because it's just water and ink, and then I'd have a variety of ink washes that I could use later on. So there was no waste.
Yeah.
Waste that whatnot, especially when you are a poor college student like I was. So that is dip pens. We have questions.
Yes, from YouTube. They're wondering if you can put this ink in a fountain pen.
that was the other thing we were going to touch base on. Whenever it comes to an ink cartridge or like a fountain pen that you can load with a cartridge full of ink, this being waterproof, it's one of those things, and I wish Frida was physically here Frida actually might be able to
She's not out.
okay, I was gonna say, because that's the thing, Frida knows more about calligraphy pens than
My
I
personal
do.
thought on it is as long as you don't let it dry out, you might be fine.
That's
Yeah.
the
As
problem.
soon as you let it dry out, it's probably going to gunk up the pen.
Yeah,
I'm super careful with mine to make sure that it's a water reactive.
and that's why usually calligraphy ink is not waterproof. It will reactivate like the Dickens. It will reactivate so fast. I would know that because I had to use that calligraphy ink that you guys gave me on that mystery art box show, and it would not dry, and then it would reactivate, and it picked up on everything. It was a very lovely blue, but it reactivates. And that's why when it comes to those fountain pens, the cartridge, like, it doesn't get clogged as bad because the ink will reactivate and kind of flow again. But this is waterproof, and that might, like Amanda was just saying, gunk it up.
Definitely make sure you keep the cap on when you're not using it.
Yeah. Or take it and completely take it apart and clean it out when you're done using it. But that's why I would suggest using like a dip pen. Because this is going to be a lot less of a hassle than cleaning an entire fountain pen. But, you know, if you have your preferred tools, I understand that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Right.
dip pens. If you guys do have any more questions on that, please feel free to pop them in the comments though. Because we will continue to go back to those questions.
And we're not just going to be scribbling on here at the very end of our show. We both have a little example of drawings that we're going to be doing, and we're going to be using a mixture of all the different tools that we're showing. So don't be sad if the dip pen was really underwhelming for you with just our scribbles here.
We're going to get back.
But we
yes.
can get right into and speaking of putting them into your own tools, we do have these Aqua Pro.
Yes, these are the Aqua Stroke Pro. This just happens to be the round set of 3 that we have. So you got a small, medium, and large kind of nib on them. But they have the, the barrel is like a reservoir. So it holds water, which is great for like watercolors.
Yeah.
But if you're an ink artist,
Yes.
it's lovely. All right, so I didn't actually fill this one up because I wanted to show you guys how to do that. But these two we did fill up.
So this one, I believe Emmy put in almost straight ink. So this one should be the darkest.
No, that is straight ink.
Yes,
Just
straight
full
ink.
straight ink. There's nothing else in there.
Lots of people like to do this for traveling and things like that, particularly watercolor artists. But you can see, if I get it running a little bit.
Which is also that right there. That's dry brushing, and I love that so much. If you guys were watching the couple shows ago that we had with the gouache, our gouache show, I was using a pen that had like a brush nib. This is also the other one that I use all the time. Is I just fill it with ink, and you can get a combination of dry brushing and those like the ink lines that kind of are a variety because you can vary your pressure. And it's very satisfying.
In this kind of dry brushing, all I'm doing to create that is that I'm not squeezing the barrel at all. That's how you get the water moving through this. And this kind of dry brushing can be great for textures, especially for like hair and fur. That is an amazing texture for that a lot of ink artists use. But if I just start squeezing my barrel a little bit, you can see I start getting a lot of ink out there. And then I can start getting some really nice dark lines, and you can see how dark this India ink really gets.
Sorry for the reach. I did want to also, I'm going to just take a brush and dip it straight into that 1 ounce of ink because I do want to get a big chunk of just solid dark area so you guys can see just how dark this is. It's so satisfying. And this is another way of using your tools in how to illustrate for inks. Wow, my words are failing me. I might have had too many gummy bears, and I'm on a little bit of a sugar high.
She got like a 5-gallon thing of gummy bears and brought them to our office.
It was on sale, I couldn't help it.
Yes.
Question back on task.
Is that a watercolor brush you are using? And will the ink ruin it?
We were just talking about this. So Technically, yes, this is a watercolor brush. It's the Mimic Kolinsky. And the reason why we chose it for today is because the whole point of the brush, it's a synthetic brush, so keep that in mind. The reason why we chose it for today is because of how much fluid and water that it can hold. So if you're using this for illustrations and things like that, and you want to get washes, you don't have to reload it a ton just to get it to kind of flow around, you know? It's just using a really great tool for what you need. But
we do recommend whenever you're painting with ink, do not mix like your nice watercolor brushes with ink because it will ruin the brushes, particularly if it's a waterproof ink, because it will dry and those little particles of ink will get stuck in your brush even if you wash them really well. Keep them separately and make sure you're using a synthetic brush when it comes to inks because it can ruin more natural hair brushes because it can be a little harsh on them. So a synthetic brush like the Mimic Kolinsky or like a Taklon brush, as long as you're keeping them separate from your watercolors, you should be good.
Yeah. That's why we've been using these for the inks, and you know we're gonna continue to use them as inks, but like they wash out quite nicely. So
yeah.
But I definitely wanted to show you how dark this ink can get, and it is the I guess finish of it is flat and like kind of velvety almost. It's very matte and it's very satisfying, which when it comes to illustrations is quite lovely because if you're going to scan this or photograph it to be reproduced, it's going to be really, really lovely for you to do so. Say if you're doing illustrations for like a magazine or any kind of like online production, that type of a thing.
Yeah, you wouldn't want a glossy finish for those kinds of things because it makes it really hard to scan or photograph.
Yes. So this right here,
this is the slightly larger brush nib of the Aqua Stroke.
Yeah, the medium size. So that one I filled the whole barrel up with water, and I put 5 drops of ink. Literally, I took a pipette, which actually I can show you guys how to load up this last one. Oh, I always turn it the wrong way. These are the opposite. It's not righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. It's the other way. But yes, so that still has some ink
They
in
do
there.
that just so like if you're drawing or writing with your barrel, it doesn't come unscrewed while you're using it. That's why they make it come the other way. But if you're not expecting it, it can be a little frustrating.
Yes, and I always turn it the wrong way, but that's just me. All right, so I just take my pipette and I fill it with water, which I'm grabbing it from my brush washing basin because it's nothing special. It's just water. Right? Filled it all the way. And then I'm going to actually leave this one as water, but the other one that I did, that one right there, I took the other pipette, this one, one that's dirty. I got a little bit of ink in there, and I just literally 5 drops that size, just like as I let it naturally drop off. And that's how much ink that I put in for that dark wash.
Yeah.
It is so incredibly potent. It's insane. You don't need a whole lot to. It'll last you quite a long way, quite a while, even with this little 1 ounce jar. But if you do a lot of like ink washes and things like that, this is a really, really wonderful thing that will stand the test of time. And I know somebody will probably ask, is it archival? Yes. It is very archival, very light fast. It's a naturally occurring material. I think it's, what is it? Soot?
Soot, yes.
Soot. India ink is made from soot, so it's really, really dark, like carbon black. So it's quite fancy. But as you can see, is that the black ink one?
Yeah, this is the darker one. It's kind of bleeding out here because it was still wet when I applied it in, but it kind of gets a really cool effect with that blending.
The other thing that you can do is, especially because this is kind of how I take my inks if I'm traveling around. I usually have one that's just water, one that's just ink, and then one that's kind of right in the middle. More if I have more, but bare minimum, that's what I have, because with the one that's like the ink wash, if I need a darker ink wash but that it's not black, I will let it dry, and then you can go on top of it again. And then you can build up those layers and get it kind of an in-between that and then the next layer.
And because it is water resistant, waterproof, I should say.
Waterproof.
It won't pick up again when you're layering more ink over top of it. So it's great for layering and getting lots of depth if you want that. And you can see here, it's not reactivating over the dip pen that I used.
Which is quite lovely. Yes, we have a question?
Yes, a couple.
All right.
One, I know you said to like clean it off with water, but if you don't, are there any like soaps or cleaners that you would recommend, like to try to get it?
Clean what off with water? The brush or?
Brushes or the nibs, like.
When it's waterproof, it's just going to be really, really, really hard to get out of there if
you let it dry.
Yeah.
If you want to use a soap while it's still wet, I think any kind of traditional brush soap should work.
Yeah.
Jerry sells several
A
different
lot.
brands of them, actually.
Yeah.
All of them would work fine for ink. I don't think any particular one.
Now, when it comes to nibs and stuff like that,
It's a little different.
I mean, I would probably suggest a liquid soap because that'll be a lot easier, but like...
I have seen some people, now be careful with this because you don't want to use a pot that you really like, but I have seen some people boil them when ink gets really stuck in them if they're metal like this. I think you'd have to look up how long to boil them because I have never done it myself, but if they get really jammed up, that might help.
Yeah, and if you are looking for a pot to use that is not your one that you use for rice or food or anything, because you don't want to mix your cooking for food things and your art stuff, just go to a thrift store and grab something that's, you know, $1. That way you keep them separate and it doesn't ever contaminate your food things, because art supplies and food don't mix.
No.
All right, so washes, and then we already used the brushes because you can use it straight with the ink and then also use it as a wash as well. The pipettes are really, really, really convenient for moving the ink around. And then we also have
Oh yes.
that right there.
We also have this wonderful palette, which you can use with inks. Be careful about what kind of palette you use with your inks, because sometimes plastic palettes can stain. Ceramic palettes tend to do pretty well, which is what we got right here. And we got ones
Porcelain.
with
Yes,
lots
yes.
of different wells.
And I'm simply moving the ink closer because I've learned this the hard way. When you are using ink in any which way, don't try to travel too far from point A to point B with it. I have gotten ink on me in so many different ways. It's a little obnoxious. Like, it's just the name of the game when it comes to inks. I've had it all over my hands. I've had it all over my computer. I've had it all over everything. Just, yeah, don't try to travel too far or even across your artwork. Because if you're trying to pull it from here and then put it into a well over there, just pull the ink closer. It's so much better. So what Mata's doing is creating washes.
And it's the same technique to use if you're going to make a wash for your brush. I essentially just put different amounts of ink in each of these wells, and I'm going to try to add the same amount of water to each one so we get like an accurate gradient when it comes to washes. So maybe I'll just do 4 drops in each. Or I might do more actually, because I put a lot of ink in there.
It's really, really strong ink. It's probably going to be really dark.
Okay, well, I'm going to put more in each of them because they'll probably, I cannot talk,
Me
all
neither.
look the same if I only add 4. So let me try and just 1, 2, 3.
All right, we're counting. Sorry.
Sorry, I went silent because I didn't want to just be going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
And I don't want to talk because I might break the concentration. But when it comes to inks like that, and this is what you're going to see with the artwork that we're about to do, that is really, really, really fun to do. When you have different washes set up like this, and you can really figure out the ratios of your India ink to water and which one happens to be the right ratios for, like, say your darkest dark or your next level, and then like your kind of mid-tone, and then like another level, and then the lightest light kind of thing. When you have like a gradation like that, it's one of those things where if you set it up, you can even put them in like a double take storage cup, which are really lovely. We have those on our website as well. And it's a little cup. It's probably, I think it holds an ounce of, it holds an ounce of fluid, anything. So it can hold paint, it can hold your ink washes, which are really lovely. And then that way, if you have ink washes that you use all of the time, you can pre-make them and have them ready to go, and you can just use a Sharpie on top or whatever it may be to notate which one's which. And that way, again, if you're working that way, it can kind of get you to the end point of creating artwork faster, because, you know, if I'm going to be honest, setup is probably the most tedious thing for me, and it kind of makes me really tired by the time I'm ready to paint. Now I know we have questions. What do we got?
Will using this ink, oh wait, we've already done that one.
No worries.
Can this ink be used to paint on canvas?
It's kind of the same as if you were trying to use watercolor on canvas,
Yeah.
where it'll stain, but you're not going to have the best results.
It's the adhesion. It's not the best adhesion. But it can go on there, and because this is waterproof, it'll probably stick a little bit better than, say, the ones that are not. But when it comes to that, there is one that will always work, and it is Yes Canvas. Because yes, you can use it for that, and yes, you can use it for that, and yes, you can use it for that too. That's why it's yes. All right, another question? Look at that, it's so pretty.
Yeah.
Can it be used alongside of acrylics?
Absolutely. That's the one thing that this is why we love this ink so much. It is mixed media friendly. You can use it with pretty much anything. Once this dries, it does not reactivate, so you can do your line work with this first, then watercolor on top, or use gouache, or use acrylic. Probably use oils, I don't know, but haven't done that. Again, you have to kind of get a surface that's good for inks and oils, but that is the Yes Canvas I would just suggest for that one.
Ink on top of acrylics, on the other hand, is not going to adhere the best. So it's always ink before acrylics, not ink after acrylics.
Oh,
Yeah.
But it might actually cause
that,
some
like,
staining,
surface?
but it'll definitely get into like the texture. I'm not even actually sure if it will stain. I think it might a little.
Textural paintings might be hard, yeah.
Well, yeah, if it like the ink gets into like the little grooves of the paint, it will be in the little grooves, but not in the rest of it. So it's not going to be good for like clear, defined lines if you want to ink over your lines like you would in like watercolor or gouache. I actually have not tried ink over top of acrylic gouache.
Ink over acrylic gouache is beautiful. That works really, really well. Because acrylic gouache has that kind of almost gritty surface that really adheres to a lot of things, which is quite lovely. Now I know we have another question still.
If at any point you need to move on, we can.
Yeah, no. Because we're getting ready to get into the artwork, so.
Is it recommended to use distilled water, or does that matter?
If you're going to be saving your inks in like little airtight bottles and things like that,
Like
and
the
you
double
want to
take palette
prevent
cups,
molding, you can use distilled water. If you're just going to be painting on paper like this, the water is going to evaporate, and it's not a concern.
Yeah. These you might want to use distilled water in.
Yeah.
I did not, because as soon as the show is over, we're probably going to clean them out and put them back into our storage over here. But that's just us personally. But, you know. But yeah. I think that's everything. If you guys do, again, have more questions, we can definitely let us know. But we are going to jump into, I'm going to just put the cap on that because it makes me nervous. Ink. It's
careful.
For you over
where it's my
Spill
nemesis. Me and ink, it's just a constant mess. Oh, Katie is cursed with ink. She's not allowed to touch the ink. All right, so we have.
Bottle is probably for me.
I mean, we've been using this a lot, so it's probably a combination of you and us.
I think I might have been the one to do that. Actually,
fine.
while I was making this, I think I did that.
It's fine.
Yeah.
It's,
You sure that wasn't the one where I swished it and it thought it had the lid on it and it didn't?
no, because I cleaned that. Yeah, no, Katie almost
'cause-
got ink all over her, and we had to just kind of stop her kind of like a toddler, and just be like, "Don't touch anything." She's cursed. It's okay.
Okay.
All right. So we have artwork. I'm gonna
love
actually
it.
just shove this.
My unrequited love.
It is. All All right. I feel like, yes. I'm going to probably let you take over because I feel like painting at the same time is a lot for everybody to watch. So I'm going to probably step back and let you kind of if you want to shove it here, it might be a little bit better view.
I don't want to kick you out here. Kick you out of the screen.
I just want you guys to see it because this is going to be so satisfying.
Yes, so
I hope you guys are ready for this.
I
don't know.
Really
You guys
high expectations here.
It's going to be amazing.
Okay, but this right here, you guys, I hope you can't see what it is yet. I do have a really light sketch layer here, but this is something, if you like ink and you've seen a lot of ink artists around, you've probably seen people do this. But I'm gonna start out by just laying down a wash of water with no ink in it. Going around the
And I'm
side.
just going to pull things closer to you.
And I'm gonna try to do it kind of quickly, even though I have to paint around things here. One, because it's boring to just watch me paint with water.
What?
And
Water
two,
on white
because
paper?
you want to make sure your water is still very wet when you're doing this technique.
Yes.
So I'm going to try to lay down a lot of water right here, which is what the Mimic Klinsky brushes are great for.
Yes. This is, again, one of the reasons why we grabbed those brushes. But you see Mott going like this and kind of dropping down and going at an angle. That's because you can see how wet your surface is. So when you're doing this technique, you really want to make sure your surface is saturated with water. Do not let it dry. You want to keep that water really on the surface and very, very, very wet. Because it'll all reveal itself in just a minute.
Yes. Which is good too if you're struggling doing this technique, because I know when I first started, I'm a watercolorist, and when I first started doing watercolors, I would get frustrated because I would try to do things like this, and my paper would dry out so fast.
Sorry, I
Turned into a duck
definitely make
today. Turned into a duck today.
I brought too much candy.
You did.
Noted.
Yeah, I'm gonna
Don't
blame
bring
you
any
for
more
this
candy
one.
to work.
This is what candy does to me. No. But I would get frustrated because I wasn't able to get like really clean washes, and a lot of that is just because your brushes might not be holding enough water. If these Mimic Klinsky brushes are great for this because they can hold a lot of water, and you can get a ton of water down on the surface really quickly and really efficiently. And that was my problem, is that I just wasn't getting enough water down fast enough, and my brush wasn't picking up enough water. So even though I was like, well, the surface looks wet, it just wasn't saturated enough to be able to get like the right effect.
No, I will say, well, because I'm at an angle too, I can see it's starting to dry here and it's starting to dry here. All you have to do is just add more water. It's okay. There's nothing rushing you. You can always just add more water.
And you guys will see here, it's not the end of the world if there's certain sections of it that are getting a little drier. It's not going to be totally dry, because this is kind of a technique that you're not going to be doing over a super large area.
I'd also recommend not a
But-
whole lot of detail either.
Yeah, no, this drawing does not have a lot of detail if you can pick it up. Actually, I think you guys can start to see a little bit the water is reflecting off the light, and you can kind of tell what it is.
All right, do we have any guesses in the comments? That's what I want to know.
You gotta guess quickly, because I'm about to...
All right,
see, I'm gonna get a
if you
little
guys
more
guess
water up
now,
in here.
you're gonna find out if you're right or not in like literally a minute.
But it's
30
this
seconds.
technique is going to give you a lot of texture very quickly, and so it's not the end of the world if parts of your painting are starting to dry. So I'm going to take a little bit of my it looks creepy, of my darkest wash, and I'm just going to start poking it in. You guys can see. I'm going to raise it up, but try not to spill it out.
Whoop.
How cool that looks.
Isn't that fun?
I'm just going to keep on doing it. And it's just going to start bleeding through the water, just like when you get watercolor bleeds. And areas here where it's like the paper has kind of warped a little bit.
It's going to start puddling in some areas, puddling in others, and then pushing away from the other ones. Oh, it's so good.
Oop, I almost dipped
Already-
into my water there. But you'll see too, the areas that I did not put water in, it's going to stretch around. I'm going to try to put a little bit more so we can get a little bit more consistency up here.
Trying to see if it. Oh, it looks so cute.
It does look kind of freaky, I will say. Okay.
I feel it's because like you can't tell that that's its tongue. Its tongue is sticking out.
I'm gonna put more details in this, but it is a cat doing the little tongue blip, little
It's what Lola does all the time. Mm-hmm. I really hope I didn't just make the thumbnail with all of my chins going.
Yeah, we don't get to choose the thumbnail image after this is posted.
That's all right. But look at his little face. All right, so what's really, really fun about this technique is that you can get those variations that are not planned. So you can kind of get those little, almost like a watercolor washy effect. But then once you let this dry, if you wanted to, you can go back in with color and kind of, you could color those lighter areas with like maybe purples or blues or whatever color you want to kind of pop in there. But you could also go in with like a dip pen and add in the details of like its nose and like its little tongue and things like that.
It is a cat. I'm gonna clean this up a little bit because you can't go back in very easily, and like this tail is looking super boxy right now, so you can go back very easily and just tighten up those areas.
He's so cute. All right, guys, the ultimate question: what is the cat's name?
I will say, for you, those of you who don't know, every October there's a big event that a lot of artists participate in called Inktober, where you draw with ink for every day of October. Typically, they'll have prompts you can follow.
Yes, I have never finished a single one.
Me
I am
neither.
so bad at it.
Me neither. But lots of them are Halloween-y themed, so we were like, oh, a black cat would be perfect.
But he's so cute.
And also a skull, so it fits the medium well.
And my artwork is also going to be kind of dark, so
Yours is so dark. Even just the sketch looks scary.
it's not intentional. It's just how to change up your references. So how many people got it right that it was a cat?
Well, we
Could you
did
see it?
Put your image references in there.
Oh,
I'm not sure if they
that's
checked
okay.
that.
That's true.
Aww.
It's all
Spoiler.
right. Well, I guess we kind of set ourselves up
Yeah.
for.
You guys can even, I gotta get a rag out here because I gotta dip this off a little bit. If you want, come back in with more water. And I can even I did this with the brush. Oh, actually, I have one up here already. But you can do it with your little, what are these called again?
Pipette.
Pipette. I should know that because I'm dating a chemist, but you can go back in and add more water in while it's still wet and have that bleed even more.
Y'all, Jean on Facebook said her black cat's name is Inkling, and that is literally perfect.
Aww. Okay.
I was gonna say Francisco, but you know.
Francisco.
Inkling.
Inkling fits.
Middle name is Francisco.
My
Inkling
canon is that this
Francisco.
is your cat that I'm
Yes.
drawing now.
All right. So, you probably are going to want to let that dry. I should probably jump into mine because I know it's 6:10ish now. So,
Gonna carefully try to move this.
I already partially did mine. I know it looks quite freaky. There's a reason for it. All right. So, if you guys did look at my reference photo, you will tell. You can see my photo ends right underneath his nose, which is a little frustrating because I really love this reference, and I really love his socks. They're stripy socks. So I have a plan. I can either just completely make that up and draw it in, but where's the fun in that? So I'm going to do a different kind of technique. That's something that is going to definitely look dark and demonic, and I can't help it. But this one, the line work that I have here already down, is me using a dip pen. So when it comes to dip pens, the ones that I'm using here, they come in, again, a variety of different nibs, so you can get all types of different sizes. This one happens to be really fine, and it has like a little bend to the tip of it. So if I hold it upside down, it actually gives me a finer line. And I wanted to just finish inking his hand here. Sorry, fine lines make me concentrate and I get quiet.
And I'm just coming back in with this dip pen on top of it and adding in some whiskers and some eyebrows? I guess they're not really eyebrows, but you know, the long cat hairs.
I mean, they have eyebrows.
Nice little buddy.
Usually very expressive. Okay, so all I'm really doing is the outline of things, but I'm going to kind of do a couple of hatching lines, which is a great way to show shading without having to kind of color it in completely. So that looks like it's a bit of a shadow. But if I look at his reference here, I'm looking at his hand here. This part of his hand over here, if I'm going to do that to his hand, I should probably do it to his arm too, because you want to be consistent. And then also to his little fingers, just as a little bit of like a shading. Again, just so it's consistent.
Stealing your ink.
How dare you? All right, so his hand starts going back into, there you go. That's enough shading to kind of indicate that it's in shadow. Do we have a question?
Yes. Is there a best paper for ink?
The
Or
paper.
recommended type or...
I have always done ink on watercolor paper. I think it's
love
just the best
watercolor
because of
paper.
its absorbency. I mean, you can see how much right now my drawing right here is warping, and I wouldn't be able to do this effect very well on any other kind of paper.
Watercolor block.
Yes.
It is glued on all four sides and it holds your paper flat, so that buckling is kept to a minimum.
Unless you stretch your paper, have it taped down or stapled
Yes.
down, that will also help you, but
All right, I have 2 of these. Where'd the third one go?
just 2 for now.
But I need the third one.
It's okay.
Where'd the third one go?
Here, try
Okay.
this
Oh,
out.
okay. I can use that. All right.
Yeah.
Perfect. That'll actually probably be better.
Because we made all these washes, so we got to use them.
That's true. All right, but I think this is this the ink or the wash?
That should be the darkest one.
I think it's ink. All right, perfect. You have a question?
Yes. Do you have any tips for controlling the ink on a nib pen so it's not wasted?
On a nib pen?
Like,
Like-
a dip, not a glass pen, but like
Oh, on the one that I was using? This right here. Dip it up until that cutout. Don't dip it all the way down here. You don't need it completely saturated all the way until the holder point. You just need it up until that opening. If it's not giving you a good flow, clean it off and then try it again. Because if you over dip your pen, the stuff that's on the backside here that's too high up is going to start drying, and it's going to kind of mess with your ink flow, and it's going to hold on to your inks rather than let it flow down. I hope that makes sense. Another question? I'm going to start inking this while you're
Yeah.
asking me.
Is there, Brooke, since you noticed you were using hot press, is that important versus cold press or rough?
No, I prefer hot press for like when you're using a dip pen because you're trying to get really fine details, and the grit from the cold press, because that's one of the main differences, is that hot press tends to be smoother than cold press, can kind of pick it up and muddy some of your details.
I think you're actually using cold press.
Yeah, but I
So
am
cold
using
press,
cold press right now,
hot press.
and it still works great. So whatever your preference may be, whether it's like a smoother texture or a little more grainy, but even like the cold press, depending on, they can have different levels of grain. So the cold press for the New York Central isn't like super bumpy, but some of them can be. So it is something to keep aware of.
And sometimes you just want that, like, things to settle down into it.
Yeah.
Or like,
Yeah, because cold press paper kind of has a little more, I don't want to say adhesion because this adheres very well, but the grit allows it to kind of like soak things up in a slightly different way than your hot press paper
Yeah.
would.
Like with the washes, that texture will be way more prominent.
Yeah, or if
As
you're using
opposed to-
like something that granulates or something that has a lot of texture, like this technique right here, the cold press can be nice because it kind of can hit those ridges a little bit more and give you a little bit more of that texture than the hot press would.
Now I added all of those details of his jacket and like, you know, his shirt, like you can see the folds and stuff like that. Now this is something that I love doing, and I'm kind of squeezing out quite a bit of ink, and I'm going to probably just dip it in there because it's a little bit easier. But I am going to go up to the line dividing his shoulder, and kind of leave a little sliver of white. That way, I'm gonna go to color in kind of, because I'm just coloring his entire suit solid black. All those details, I don't need them. I just want the general shape. And this is a really fun way of doing this with hair as well. It's a really, really fun technique to get kind of the shape of the hair, but without having to draw all of the detail. But when it comes to those dividing lines where like his shoulder is defined, I want to keep those just a hint and an indication, just because I want him to still have structure and form. And I'm squeezing all of the ink out really fast. But it's a control thing. So I am making sure that my bristles are still really saturated so I can get a ink wash really fast and it's really, really, really solid. Like no dry brushing. But if I need to get into thinner areas, I'm using less of like the whole flat surface. I'm using more of the tip of the brush.
And I'm actually decided I was going to go back in and dry brush a little bit around the edge of my cat just to make it seem a little bit fluffier.
He's so cute. Yeah. All right, so same thing here. Actually, you know what? I'm going to go up until, what is that? Is that the lapel?
Mm-hmm.
The little collar area of a suit. I don't wear suits, so it's one of those things that I
think you could rock a suit.
I mean, if anybody wants to see me in a suit,
Maybe for our
Let me
300th
know.
episode.
I will show up in a tuxedo and a mustache. You guys like this video, I'll also rock a monocle. Katie is just like, ugh. All right, so I'm gonna actually turn this upside down because I need to go up to that line right there, and I pull, since I'm right-handed, I pull my lines better from this direction. So I know that just because I happen to have practiced this a lot. So try and rotate your piece if you need to get a little bit of a different leverage. Don't forget that you can do that. You know, you don't have to paint it in the correct orientation. All right, so just a little indication of his arm down there. And it's not exactly perfect. You can kind of see that line, but it's there and you get a hint that it's there. Now the rest of it, I am going to leave his little pocket square. Look at me knowing terms and stuff. That one I happen to know because it goes in your pocket and it's square.
Makes sense.
Emmy, is there a way to correct mistakes with this ink?
Funny you should ask that. So when I was inking these lines right before the show started, I'm gonna pop that on real quick. I was drawing his nose with the dip pen, and Ming is here, if you're listening, calling you out here, he didn't sneak over, he's just really quiet, so he was walking over here to get the cameras and everything set up, and I was over here drawing, and I was very concentrated and looking down, and then he sneezed and jump scared me. He's got a dot on his nose now.
It's very small.
It's very small because the nib that I was working with is very small. So when it comes to stuff like that, if you make a mistake, make it intentional. It was not a mistake. I meant to do that, right? And the way that I might be able to alleviate that problem is by how I'm going to address his head and things like that. So I will show you how to do that in just a minute because I want to actually just get the side of his jacket there, and then I'm going to actually address like his face and the fact that he's missing top of his head because I didn't really draw in the top of his head because I didn't have it. Again, I could have made that up, but I didn't want to because I have a plan. So actually I'm going to switch over to a really, really tiny brush because I want to make sure that I can get a really good detail of up around this corner of his jacket going around his neck. And
Ming popped in the chat and said sorry.
Oh, Ming, it's okay. It's honestly, it's really.
It's a teachable moment.
It happens. It was meant to happen during the show. So, when it comes to stuff like that, if you accidentally, because this has also happened to me, if you butterfingers drop your brush on your painting, because I've done that so many times.
Me too.
Make your painting intentionally messy. So, when I was drawing the lines, I started messing up my lines down here on the chair. They're really, really sketchy. But you see how I have them really sketchy over here, really sketchy over here, really sketchy over here. I continued that really sketchy, messy look to hide the fact that I messed up my line. And that's kind of part of the name of the game, is that if it's messy and it looks like a whoops, I didn't mean to do that, you have the two choices. You can either make it an intentional messy piece, or you can try and hide it somehow. Now, with this being a watercolor paper, you could, especially if you're going to reproduce this and send it off for like a magazine illustration or book illustration, something like that, you could very easily pop a little bit of like white gouache on that, hide it, and then when you scan it and reproduce it, no one's gonna know. How are they gonna know? But when it comes to the original, that white gouache might be a brighter white than your paper. Mm-hmm. So unless you color match it, then you might have a problem, I guess, kind of making it look perfect. But I have a plan. All right, so I know he's only halfway done. It's okay. I'm going to continue with this little brush. Actually, I'm going to steal this one too. Ha ha ha. I'm going to take water.
Do you want a bigger brush?
No. I gotta kind of control it. So I want it to kind of swoosh over that way. Because I'm going to do kind of similar to what Mott did. Now I know that my line work on his face is dry, so I don't have to worry about it. Right? And I'm going to take the lightest wash that I can find and kind of tap it in there just to kind of get that wash kind of going around his face. And then I might continue that wash in places that would make sense on his skin tone, to where it's a combination of like a shadow and then now he looks a little bit like a demon. And this is what we were saying, like,
So
It
creepy.
looks like Thanos just snapped.
what's that? Fern Gully. That reminds me of Fern
Hexus.
Gully. What's his name?
Hexus.
Hexus. So I wanted it to kind of get lighter down where his face kind of comes into view. But I also wanted it to get darker. And then the thing is, it's really wet over here. And so that ink just wants to follow the water. Water is going to flow wherever water is, and it's going to try and get into everything. So here's my way of kind of controlling that. It's really, really wet, and it's going to flow no matter what. But if I take an easy wiper and kind of dab it up, I can control what happens. Right? And then if I want to get that a little bit darker again in certain spots, because this is still wet, maybe I get a little bit of a darker wash and pop it in over here, maybe. And if I rinse off my brush. There we go. Now his name is Francisco.
I'd like to think that this is his cat.
It is. Look at his little face. I love it.
Oh, he's so derpy.
He's so cute. So the other thing I wanted to show you is that you can see his jacket and the chair, there is no divide. When it comes to the chair over here, right where his hand is, it's also really, really dark. Oh, I got ink on my reference photo. It's really, really dark, and you can see that divide because of how light his pants are. So I might do the same thing with that line. But the thing is that I'm going to put that line in wherever that divide is, and then I might look back on it once I have all of those places kind of blocked in and go, that's a little too much. So let me take my ink and I can kind of erase away some of those and just give a little hint. Now, I didn't erase that information because our brains will still make that connection of that's the top of his arm leading up to his shoulder. You don't have to have that in order to understand what's happening. We've all seen a suit. We all understand how suits work. And we also all understand how a person sitting, how that functions as well. So I don't have to give you all of that information, which is really, really fun. But I thought this was a fun way of addressing his missing head. I don't know, you guys tell me. Did it get a little too funky, or do you like... What's his name again? His name just... well, Hexus. This is like Hexus in 2023. He is now a businessman.
Well, Suzanne said you blew his mind. In the ad.
That's why I was like, I just didn't want it to... That's why I didn't add splatters, because I was like, I don't want to do... You have to think about these things. You know? But if I were to also take a smoky kind of approach where his hand is concerned, you know, you might kind of make that connection of like his hot coffee is very similarly kind of... Let me actually just get a big thing of water. That is really dark ink. Okay. So there you go. You can understand that that's smoke coming out of his coffee, and so that's smoke coming out of his head. It's like his head is smoke. I don't know how to explain that, but it's a fun way of addressing a missing portion of your reference. You know? So, do we have any last minute questions on ink and how this works?
Oh, just how fast does it dry? It dries similar to watercolor paint?
Yeah.
It dries through evaporation, so the water content in it.
Yeah, because my drawing here obviously has a lot of water content, so it's going to take longer to dry than Emmy's, who did like a straight flat wash.
Yeah, but even that flat wash, like I was really saturating it, and it's dry. Now, granted, the little water area where I put the steam from the coffee, that's still wet. You guys can see that reflecting. But that's just because the water hasn't evaporated. And I can't ever give you an answer of, like, how long it takes to dry because it depends on your studio, your humidity levels, your temperature. If you're in wintertime, it's going to take a lot longer for it to dry rather than, like, the summer in Arizona. That's... dry like that. But that was ink, guys.
Yes.
Did you guys have fun? I hope you did, you know.
If you want to check out any of these products that we've shown here today, make sure you check out jerry'sartorama.com, where our teacher's card is. You can type in the code JL290 into the search bar and it'll bring up all of these products for you. And if you do some fun ink art and you want to show us your art, make sure to post it on the Jerry's Live Facebook group.
Yes.
If you want to join, answer the security question. Otherwise, we will not let you in. You have to answer it.
Robot. We deem you a robot if you don't answer your security question. So, but make sure you do join us next week. No, I believe it's going to be just you, not me.
Yes, it will just be me.
But
And
We have
Facebook only.
because we have a guest. Jimmy Leslie is going to be coming back on and talking about gouache, which is incredible and so inspirational. I'm so excited.
Yes.
And I'm going to be watching the show as well. So I hope to see you guys in the chats. But that was everything. I hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye.